Jones, and boy, have we got some stuff for you tonight. Hi, Mike.
Hey, Dale. Um, was that for whom is that bell tolling?
Oh, that's telling me it's time to go on the air. Gee, after
Oh, I
almost
see.
a
I see.
year, it's hard
Yes.
to remember that.
Yes.
Last night we broke some news for you tonight. We have some more news for you and a chance to vote. Now we try to be a little flexible with this show, and of course we had a show in mind for the voting, but. Obviously, this news that we told you yesterday about the new testing of the water, and if you missed that, we're going to tell you all about it. That would take precedence, and it gives you a chance to say what you feel about this. Look, had a couple people say, "Well, I tried to do this during your live show and it didn't work." No. If you press the buttons during the live show, it's actually not going to work immediately. We have to wait till a couple of minutes after the show is over, and then Mike goes in and he does magical mystery tour things with the buttons, and then when you press them, then they register your vote. Okay, so it's not till right after the ding, right after the show. That's number one. Number two is, for some reason, if you're on some kind of cell phone or something and it just doesn't seem to be responding to you, we also have an email where you can send your responses and say, I wanted to click on slightly perturbed or
Yeah.
totally outraged. And here's the email address here. You
Right.
see, Mike.
And just send in us an email indicating what your vote was on that, and it will be registered in the exact same fashion.
Right. badcounty@cpros.com. Okay. Or if you're looking at us on Facebook or Twitter or some other goofy thing, you can also post, "I would like to vote this way," and we'll see that you get a chance to vote.
Mm.
We're all about voting rights here. Mhm.
Yes.
Okay, so what was the news that happened today? This is really interesting. Okay, so Mike's going to tell you a little bit about how we got here, and then I get to tell you the news. Go ahead, Mike. Tell them how
How
we
we
got here.
got here? Well, I drove here from the store here a little
You
while
live
ago.
there.
And that's what, yes. One, I know I'm sitting. I do this show from down by the bridge. Can't you see that?
Yes, yes. He's a
That's,
troll.
yes, I'm a troll. Yes, I've been accused of being a troll. Um, no, I mean essentially, there erupted on Facebook probably a month ago. Um, you know, a big hullabaloo about potential arsenic in the water, and as a result of the removal of Fielder Dam. And there was, been a lot of battling back and forth on Facebook about that between certain parties, and then Eric Shaftsma somehow arrived in the little back room and to give a proposal to the county. They accepted this proposal, which was very, very expensive. And then recently, Viken Nikodian and Lori Johansson went and tested the water, and they came up with essentially no arsenic. And they presented this at the weekly business session, which took place yesterday afternoon at 1:30. And that's kind of where we're at right now. So who knows what will happen next, Dale?
So right after that meeting, the there was a lot of fallout from that, and we announced what had happened at that meeting because it was really impossible for anybody at home to hear any of it because once again the IT department for the county just can't do the job right. I mean, really, maybe they're lovely people, but not when they're doing their job. Okay. So we have the only audio copy of that as far as I know. All right. So we announced that, and a lot of people, it stirred it back up again. People were pretty upset because this whole test that Viken and Lori did only cost them like $150 or something like that, and they got a better lab, at least according to them, that would volunteer to do it for free for a year to test the water to be sure that we're all safe.
Once a week, that's 52 separate tests.
Right. So I thought it was kind of interesting. Now, Usually the weekly business session's at 9 a.m. This one's at 1:30. The commissioners had a meeting at 11 where Keithek wanted to talk about things that weren't on the agenda, and I objected, and he never did get around to talking about things that weren't on the agenda, like the new fire ordinances, the new fire laws. It's not on the agenda. Anyway, so that's another story. So they went into executive session. It was a real surprise. They went into executive session today. Now, I had looked yesterday to see if it was posted. This is one of the reasons they get in trouble with the state. It's the state law. We're supposed to know when they're talking about things with each other because we're the bosses. So I looked at between 9 and 10, and it wasn't posted. And they're supposed to tell us 24 hours ahead of time so people can come. Now, Eder Campuzano over at the Courier, he's actually a reporter, go figure, for the Courier. How long is that guy going to be welcome there? And he looked about 11 o'clock, and he did see that it was posted 24 hours ahead of time. So he went down there today. I can no longer go, even though I went for 6 months, because now they suddenly decided, you're not media after all. Really? Okay, so the commissioners came out of and the executive session was listed as talking about the water contract. Let's get the numbers right here. 9 a.m., they didn't meet. 11 o'clock, they had a meeting about something else. That was yesterday. 1:30, they have a meeting of the weekly business session. Then next morning, 10 a.m. this morning, they have an executive session meeting to talk about the water contract. Really? Nobody can talk about what happens in that meeting. The commissioners can, but the press is not supposed to. But when they came out of that meeting, they took a vote because they're not supposed to vote in that meeting. And the vote was to cancel the water contract. Cancel it. It's done. Now, there's still a couple of questions. These guys were a month into Water Lab, was a month into the contract. Will they get paid $1,111.30? Which is 1/12 of that contract? I don't know. We don't have any answers to that.
Yeah, you shouldn't be planting that suggestion in the minds of the Grants Pass Water Lab people.
We're the reporters.
Yeah, well, they didn't do anything unless they have done something, and in which case, tell us what you've done. But right. 10 grand, it'd be interesting if they went and tested for the exact same thing, arsenic content. Okay.
Oh, that would be interesting.
And then they bring their bill to the county for 10 grand, and you contrast that with the $134 I think it was that these guys paid, and it's like, no, this thing is going to play out over the next couple of years, and we're going to see what's going to happen. I'll make a prediction. I'll go way out on a limb here. Nothing's going to happen.
The commissioners won't want to ever talk about it again.
Oh, yeah, the commissioners don't want to talk about this anymore. But I suspect as it relates to the sediment, the sediment may have whatever it has in it, but that is not ever going to manifest itself in any dangerous level in the water that's coming down the Rogue River. I just don't think
so. Let's repeat this news again. The commissioners met in executive session today.
Mm.
They came out of executive session and immediately voted that they're going to cancel the contract with Eric Schaafsma and Grants Pass Water Lab. Okay, they're not going to do that anymore, and so that whole 5-year deal is over. And it was based on what Vika Nikodian and Lori Johansson told them in a meeting. This is the news. This is the power of 2 people and then 2 others that are telling you the news. You're not going to see this any other place except for here. Maybe tomorrow, the Courier might have an article about this. Eder was at that meeting. There's nothing on KJO, as far as we know. There's nothing on the TV stations. This is the place. We did post it on Facebook. Go ahead.
And this is big news here because there has been a scare about arsenic. Now, the Courier, to their credit, has done an article here not long ago about the the situation in Grants Pass as to the arsenic and stuff, and kind of poo-pooed that. But there's still been this thing hanging over all of our heads as to whether Fielder Dam and the removal of the Fielder Dam was going to cause the whole river to be contaminated. And I think we pretty well determined that unless, there's a big monstrous subterranean pool of arsenic waiting for a little bit of sediment to be taken off of the top, that we're not going to be seeing any of that.
So why are we putting this on a show with a vote? I mean, it's the news. All right. They were kind of lunkheads. This guy's holding up his finance test says F. His ethics test, why, says F. His leadership test says F. Listening skills, F. Okay, they're not listening to us because we did try to warn them about this stuff. But okay, so if tragedy averted, where's the problem? Why would I have any kind of vote? Because how did this
I got
start?
a good reason.
Why?
Well, are you slightly perturbed that your county would spend like $500,000 over 5 years? And I'm a little confused because the $135,000 and then it being a 5-year contract, that whole thing, listen, I've got a correction to make at some point here. Don't let me forget, Dale. You should be mad that your county is going to blow money out of a cannon like confetti, and for no real purpose. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, that they had discovered that, oh my God, there's tons of arsenic coming out of this stuff. Which, of course,
what are you going to do about it?
Yeah, what are you going to do about it, and who's going to pay for it? We've already determined that right down, I mean, literally within sight of the dam removal site, there is no measurable level of, there's a measurable level, but it's less than 1 part per billion, which you need 10 parts per billion to even start getting in the realm of dangerous here. So it isn't there. And so throwing good money after bad on that just seems like a bad idea. And apparently the commissioners agree.
And how did we get into this? That's what we're going to show you, because we'd shown you this once before. It was about a half an hour meeting where they were talking with Eric Schaafsma. And this number came up 6,000 times the acceptable limit for humans. Where did that come from? This is why I would vote this way, because this is what the commissioners were told. I would also vote this way because this was a Cheryl Walker project from the beginning. Yes, Diane Hoover from the health department came in, but who is the liaison to Diane Hoover? It's Cheryl Walker. This is a Cheryl Walker project. And I got one more for you. When they took the vote today, after all this stuff, and we're going to tell you more about it, but we're giving you advance notice, there was one person who thought that this contract should go through. Well, we should do it anyway, even though it's been proven that it was, well, at least a scandal, okay? I'm not saying it's a scam, but definitely somebody was sold a bill of goods on this, okay? Keith Heck went ahead and said, no, I think we should still do it. Keith, what are you thinking? Now, I'm up here on that one, buddy. That's unbelievable. I would have thought it would be Cheryl, wouldn't you? But it was Keith.
Yeah. Well, and apparently she can be influenced, and probably by the potential, political fallout from this situation.
Yes.
He's running for re-election.
Yes.
So she probably thought, well, if it becomes clear in a short period of time that all of these tests that these other guys do as well are coming up with negligible dangerous levels of whatever chemical it is that they're searching for, then there's going to be hell to pay.
Now, just one little parenthetical note. We're going to start playing videos. You're going to go, whoo, they're playing videos now. Come on over here, Marge. It worked like a charm at yesterday's meeting. I did get a chance to speak again, and they've completely reversed themselves on this, both Keith and Cheryl, with Simon not having anything to say, of course, as usual. He sees injustice. He's got nothing to say. And the meeting started with a public hearing. Really? You're going to let a citizen speak during a public hearing? These are state rules. There are really tough rules about this. And as I pointed out, when the time came for me, he goes across the room, Keith Heck does, I'm holding up my hand. I said, I'm holding up my hand. Yeah. And I said, well, this is a public hearing. You're not going to let me speak? I said, I am a candidate for commissioner and I'm running against you and you're not going to let me speak? That worked like a charm. Suddenly, I'm speaking.
Yeah. Well,
and
good
all
deal.
I did was, it was about fees, and I pointed out what we found out and told you about on this show, how we got into this fee thing, but that's for another show. Okay, so these are the votes along the side here. If you see or hear something, and we'll stop it occasionally to point out what we think is outrageous or at least perturbing, and then you can decide if you want to pass along your feeling to the people, the characters that were involved in this. Go ahead and let's hear what Eric Shasma has to say to the county commissioners in August.
When Fielder Creek was notched on August 13th, I got a call from a client saying, whoa, what's going on? Anyways, so then it turned into a kind of a scramble. We contacted Senator Berchiger and Representative Wilson and his staff, and we tried to get a hold of Representative Stark, was unable to reach him. Anyways, and also ex-Representative Anderson, they all were very insistent that we get out there and get some samples. We don't have a baseline for what.
Now, just a little bit of analysis of this. So there are other politicians who were involved in this whole project. Carl Wilson, Herman Berchiger. They tried to get Gordon Anderson. Really? They couldn't get Dwayne Stark. They said, we've got to do this right away. This fellow had gone out, and for a client, he had done some testing. Well, okay, he's a profitable American, and he doesn't want to sell his test just once. He probably wants to sell his test twice. And he did that for somebody else. He did a contract for somebody else. Sounds like it was a baseline study, but he's telling the commissioners there are no baseline studies. What did he do for the other person if they were interested in poisons in the water? Probably what he was going to be charging the county, don't you think?
Yeah.
Well, okay, keep going.
Behind the dam, and that's the biggest issue that we're concerned with at this time, is what's behind the dam. And the report that I had reviewed on behalf of the county's legal I think it was the end of last year that I reviewed it, was a sedimentary sample which was really insufficient in their probe. From talking with one of them this past week, they made a lot of assumptions.
Now, he talked with legal counsel. He did it on behalf of our legal counsel, Wally Hicks. Oh, really? He did it on behalf of Wally Hicks. And this guy, who Lori Johansson and Vika Nikodian claim is not qualified to do anything of these kinds of tests that he's talking about. He did the tests. How the heck did he do the test if he's not qualified to doing it? Somebody's not telling the truth.
Well, you know what? If I could see a situation where you're a water lab and you know how to do these particular tests, and you do these particular tests, but you can't issue them with an accredited signature saying that this is this because, I'm certifying that because I'm Joe such and such. And
no, but you can use it to sell a $500,000 contract.
Yes, you can. Listen, it's very clear that you can. We all saw on this video where they did it.
They're easy marks. Who was that guy that came in from Medford that was going to, walk the dog and feed the cat? Yes, right. And they were going to go all for it. Nobody else was. But the commissioners were lining up because we're hanging by our feet. No, they wasn't because we have no money. No, that's not the reason. Because we're in a fiscal emergency with the sheriff. No, that wasn't the reason either. What was the reason, Mike, that they had all that money?
Because it's not theirs.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
what it is. I knew it was
That is
something.
what
We
it
have
is. That
voting
is-
along here that you could do anytime. Okay. All right. Keep going, Eric Shasma. Sell them a deal here.
If it's not there, it's not here. And they didn't do a thorough investigation of what was being retained behind the dam before they were going to take it out. Anyway, so I got there, and they had just taken 3 feet off the top, and the turbidity in the creek was substantial. Anyway, so if you look at your report, and the first one,
We don't get to see it, of course.
sample number is 215-03194. That one was taken 75 feet below the dam at a place where I could get across the creek and be able to take a aqueous sample. This is of the water that was coming off the dam. Now this is just, the morning of its first release. So the results were the aluminum and these levels, they're elevated for drinking water. Turbidity was pretty high and so forth. But obviously the big concern is, okay, what's going to be coming as it comes down?
Just a quick note. When he's saying the turbidity's high, the water is full of the mud from them. They cut a piece of this. It's an earthen dam, right? So they cut a piece of it out, and you got dirty water flowing there. So he took a sample of the dirty water, and it's higher than normal for aluminum. I believe aluminum is the most. It's one of the most prevalent
Naturally
metals.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And so it was undrinkable. It probably couldn't see through it either. That's the interesting thing there. But that doesn't even mean anything as to the quality of the water. Even the next day could be totally different.
Well, now, and I got a question about this baseline again. Oh, it's too late to do a baseline. And now, wait a minute. He was there. He's a water lab guy. He was there the same. He just heard him say it was the same day.
Yeah, right.
Now, why is it that he needs now $135,000 for just this 1 year to go and do that again? Didn't he just do it? Isn't that what it sounds like he said? He was there the first day.
Well, I'd like to know exactly, what he was going to be doing and what he was going to be testing for. What did it cost to do what he just did there?
$135,000.
Somebody paid him $135,000 for that.
No, that's what he was looking for from the commission.
That's what he's. Yeah. But one of the first questions. This is where you really have to question.
Yes.
How well the commissioners are doing this. Why didn't they immediately inquire? Well, what did you discharge that guy to do that study?
Yeah, and didn't you discharge him? And now you're going to charge us too to do the same thing?
Right. To say, here's your results.
Yeah,
yes,
and what did you charge us? What did you charge that guy? Can you charge us $1.95 or whatever it was you charged him? Did you charge him $135,000 to do that test?
Yeah,
that's a little unfair because that was for a whole year, and he probably wasn't testing the salmon.
Well,
and don't forget about the bugs. He's going to test bugs too.
Yeah, as I've said before, I used to run a public water system, and they stay on you all the time. You have to deliver this report. There's certain things on a schedule throughout the year that you have to take these particular samples in a certain way, and the water lab sends you special jars which already have something in the jar. And some of them don't, and you're testing for copper, your lead, zinc, benzene. Everything. Everything.
That's bad,
so, and it would, during those, types of tests, it would get pretty expensive. But I never spent more than $5,000 a year. Now I know that the people who bought the place from me down there, they're spending about $8,000 a year.
Now this fellow, the contract that he signed with the commissioners, and they signed it. Oh yeah, we got to do this. He wasn't even going to do the work. Somebody else was going to do the work.
He's
He
going
was
to
going to
sub
be
it
the
out.
administrator.
Yeah.
And if I remember right, I think he was going to get $44,000 to be the administrator while someone else did the work.
Yeah, and you know what that means? That means he's getting $44,000 for nothing, essentially. And listen,
Hey, it's hard to type things up these days, really, when you think about it.
He wouldn't even have to do that because the other people were going to prepare the reports. He probably doesn't have the chops to deliver some of these reports.
Right.
So he has to have somebody else deliver the reports. And listen, I'm a capitalist. I completely support the idea of subcontracting. As a general contractor, I didn't want to have 10 guys working for me that I would have to pay workman's comp and prevailing wages and all kinds of things to all of these people who sometimes are going to be working while they're on the clock and sometimes not. I liked being the general because I could come in there and I will hire a couple of guys and we'll frame it ourselves. And the other guys that I had were general contractors too. We'd come in, frame the place, and then we would sub all the subcontracting things, HVAC and plumbing and electrical and etc.
Okay.
And the point that I'm making is that it's completely legitimate for him to come in and lay out a proposal and subcontract the entire thing and net a bonus off of the top.
Except he's soaking the taxpayers for this.
Yeah,
and
that's
that
irrelevant, completely
it's
irrelevant.
About safety and about health.
Yes, right. And it's completely irrelevant. We're not being touchy-feely here. It's completely legitimate for him to do that. Now, where the responsibility lies for the taxpayers' money is on the other side of the table.
That's right.
And that is the commissioners. And they are supposed to.
Right.
Exactly. They are supposed to stop and make sure that we are not getting soaked. That's not Eric Schaafsma's job. That's their job.
Okay, well, let's see how well they did based on the information you gave them. It's a little bit more in this clip that we're going to see.
A little bit more, yes.
So then we flip over to the next.
Help me understand. We've got aluminum, we've got EPA. This is the recommended, this is 200.7.
That's the method, the scientific method by which we run it.
Okay. And then the LOQ is?
That's the limit of the instrumentation to report. I can't report below that number.
Oh, okay.
I can see below it, but I can't report below it.
Okay.
And then the results is what was in the sample.
Right. Okay. And how do we know?
Now, we're not going to play back where he keeps asking the same question again and again.
How do I know that, this is a red light of concern?
Because this is surface water, it has different standards. The concern is for the people on Evans Creek and eventually people in Grants Pass and Josephine County is gravity flows downhill.
Right.
Eventually it's going to be going past the screens at the Grants Pass water treatment plant.
Surface water is?
That's why it's important for us to know at the beginning what the heck is potentially going to be coming downstream.
Surface water?
On that is, do you have a baseline then for here so that you know what this is before anything gets
Good
here?
questions,
If you don't
Cheryl.
have a baseline here, what purpose or
He
what
already knows the answer.
benefit would a test be afterwards if we don't have a baseline here?
I can talk to Jason and I'm sure we can get a sample at the plant.
From the city.
From the city, yeah. Jason's he works at the water plant.
The baseline that you have here from what was released, if this intake down here or the river here where water is taken out is already approaching that, so then there would not be an increase. I mean, it would just be the same thing. But if we
maybe
have
it's already
something lower than that and this comes down and shows then we have a greater amount, then we would have something we need to be concerned about.
Correct.
So we should be concerned if it's high anyway, but what I'm saying is we don't have a baseline here. How will we know how what's coming down affects it?
So what Eric and I have kind of talked about
Diane Hoover.
procedurally is, and he's pulling together a proposal, is to establish a baseline at the standpipe removal, the baseline here, so we can monitor.
We already have both of those.
Yeah, right. As a matter of fact, you could probably go get that baseline from Jason at the water plant, because I'm sure that they're keeping track of this. And as Roy Lindsay so emphatically told us, they do care about water, and they're staying right on top of this. And that guy Jason down there at the plant is a pro. So clearly, either there was a miscommunication, or somebody was, just trying to feather their political bed ahead of time by claiming to save Grants Pass from the scourge of, dangerous chemicals.
Well, Dan Hoover says he needs to go. He's working up a contract so he can go out to the dam again and get a baseline again. And then they're going to talk with the guy at the city who already has a baseline here, but he needs a contract to go get the 2 baselines, which he already has.
Yeah. And the interesting thing is that I wouldn't particularly consider that when you're removing the dam and the initial water is pouring out of there, carrying with it whatever has been stirred up, that's not your baseline. I mean, okay, that may be the high water mark for whatever.
Well, it's too late to go back in time and do it properly. Yeah.
Well, the point I'm making is that there's a lot of contaminants that are coming off at that time in one boom thing that, once it starts raining, it's not going to be like that. It isn't going to be like that after the fact. So
it's going to be less.
So what does that tell you? And by the way, once that hits the creek and goes down and hits the Rogue River, it's going to be down here in an hour. Okay, so if that breaks loose and you wait 2 weeks to test it, I don't think you're going to get anything out of that thing, because most of that is going to be mixed into the water to such a degree that it's really not going to be all that detectable, especially a couple of weeks later.
Okay, let's play a little bit more of this.
What's happening with that sediment as it comes down the Rogue River.
Okay.
And
now
so
it's sediment.
this proposal will be ready.
We'll have it together September 8th, and then I can come and present that to you guys.
Oh, great.
At that time.
Good. I'd like to see that.
All right, so that was the first test, was in the water, 75 feet below the dam. The second test is taken.
Do we know what? I mean, he said that he took a test. He said something about aluminum. There wasn't anything conclusive in what he said.
No.
Did you hear anything in there about something's off the chart or whatever?
No, not yet.
Oh,
not
okay.
yet.
All right.
Coming.
Just checking.
Sample number, the sample ID number is the top left corner of the page. Is for 215-03195. That was a sediment scraping that I took a quarter mile upstream from the dam. Again, this is on the surface of the reservoir bottom. So it is a sediment sample. But at the top, there's elevated levels of the aluminum. Arsenic is over the EPA limit. There's a number of other potential contaminants there. We were testing it for mercury. I showed trace mercury, and there was concern about the old mine upstream that purportedly was a uranium mine, and we did show trace uranium also in that scraping. Then,
again, pardon my stupidity. The LQ, is that is the allowable level?
No, that's limit of quantification. I can only give numbers above that. So, for instance, on aluminum, it's 0.04 parts per million. I can only report above that.
Okay.
Yeah, it should be noted here at this point that this is the guy who
ask him again.
This is the guy who chose to continue with the contract. Just so you know. All right, here we go.
I can't report below. So then the next test, which was taken the day after, they had knocked out the west side of the dam all the way down to the bottom. This is not the center of the ancient flow channel. It's off onto the west side, but I was able to get two samples on that day. This is the second day. One was of the water flowing on top of the bedrock coming out from the sediment. And those numbers, I mean, the sample on that day looked really clean. And the numbers were okay. Although the arsenic was around the same. Aluminums are lower than, I believe, the first day. Yes, it was lower than that which was suspended in the water below the dam after the first day. But that same day, I also took a sediment scraping on the upside of the dam abutment, and
you don't have, they don't have the results.
no, we do. I do.
No, they don't, never have.
Oh, you don't have it.
Because
Oh, this
I didn't
was,
get it when I came to your office.
okay, I apologize. Anyways, so if you look at your reports, you think the aluminum in the aqueous sample was at 20 parts per million. In the sediment sample, it was 17,065 parts per million. The arsenic, which was at 7 parts per billion, was 21.1 parts per million. So we're
this is an interesting thing that he's saying here, because as unfortunately Dale has gone black screen on me, so I don't even know if he hears me. Can you hear me, Dale? Dale is unfortunately seems to not be there. I
am.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, you've disappeared. But anyway, he was saying that he was saying that the arsenic was 7 parts per billion. And this is at the time when it's all the turbidity was so high, water's all muddy. They just knocked out 7 parts per billion. Lori told us yesterday 10 parts per billion is the is where danger can start to be talked about at 10 parts per billion. And he said 7 parts per billion here. So even when this water was all stirred up and they just knocked the dam out, it wasn't even at danger levels.